So every process has its stages. And by process, I mean the vast tapestry of stories that unravel in our lives. The journeys that we sometimes willingly and sometimes not take on. And the process takes many shapes. It can be a piece that we want to play, it can be a software project, a painting, it can be an e commerce hustle, anything that begins as a shape in our mind and claims a space that it can call mine. And once it does, it's almost certain that it will manifest in reality at some point in time and courage. So we start, and it is often not pretty, it's often very discouraging. And sometimes it feels like the reward for conquering doubt is a lot of uncertainty. And I have learned that uncertainty and doubt are very much signs of the unpaved path that we take on. Um, it is if it's an internal seatbelt that can restrict all motion if left loose. And I oftentimes keep stock of a thought that comes up, which is if I can only be done with it. And there's this idea that if could only take less time, be easier, or simply finished. But the mirage of completion is nothing more than the desire to escape the discomfort that the now is bringing forth, that the process is requiring from us. So recently, I was working on a painting of mine, and I paid close attention to the discomfort of the initial stages. The raw beginning that reflected nothing that I imagined, and the gap between concept and reality was suddenly exposed, which left me feel very uncomfortable. And the promise of ease was never given by the process itself. It's an illusion that I created and that we oftentimes so create without even realizing. And we might have had similar experiences before, but unless they were recorded and integrated into what can be referred to as our wisdom schema, they remain a statements of a fact. And I learned a beautiful distinction that comes up in Arabic between two terms, one ilm and the other hikmah. Ilm referring to theoretical knowledge or facts, and hikmah referring to wisdom that is integrated and we can act upon, some type of embodied truth. And I feel like in those moments, it's so much the case that we are not embodying the knowledge of what it takes. So the gap widened during working on the painting because also I kept this end image as the title image of the process. Um, but in reality, the end is only 1% of the whole thing. 99% of the time, the image is going to keep shifting, changing, and is going to be uncomfortable for our confidence to watch. And in truth, I realized that the desire for completion is simply the mass inability to tolerate uncertainty. This time around was a bit different because I asked myself what is to be done. Like when I paint, I cannot really fall prey to the same unconscious script that keeps running. It's really not sustainable. So, something that I decided to do is actually to keep a close record of every stage, how I felt, how it looked, and the thought process behind that, the uncertainty and the doubt. And every time that I said to myself, well, you can just ditch it or leave it, it's not gonna look good at the end, it's not gonna be justified in a way. And because I diverted my attention towards noticing those, they became as some evidence or a record that I was carefully examining and analyzing, not much as truisms that suddenly I had to pay attention to. So my North Star statement was like, keep stock if you feel like it's not worth it at the end. And when the end came, I saw that cannot be further from the truth. Because in reality, the process was so complex. I changed so much. The artwork changed itself. And the intentions also shifted from outcome based to process based, and the whole journey that the painting took. Because at first, when I had the idea, it was only okay, I have the outcome as the mere signpost that I drive towards. And enduring the process and enjoying it was so much more complex than just the superficiality of just being done with something and arriving there, that towards the end it felt like, yeah, it's pretty much done, and I'm glad of how it worked out and that I worked on it. But this is just a tiny part of the pleasure that I derived from going through that process. So basically, documenting all of that was giving me the evidence of how the process actually looks like, what it takes, and the reality. And it was much easier. And continuing working on other projects, this really felt like it pushed the needle, because suddenly I had experiential evidence of something that I can draw upon every time when the doubt comes up, because it's pretty much a protective mechanism, not a truism or something that's actually helpful. So I think it's so much often that it's the case that we should ask ourselves during working on a project if a thought or an idea that our minds have is useful. Not if it's true, but if it's useful. Being true is also a pointer towards fact, something that we should do, because facts are not agnostic in a way. They're not neutral. They point towards doing something, as Abraham Maslow says. So I oftentimes think that's true, but it's far more useful when we are in the battle ring, so to speak, to actually ask ourselves what's helpful and maybe judge the truisms after, know how we should basically integrate those truths or knowledge into the future. So I think experience really gives us the true measure of the real, and it shows us the rawness and discomfort. They're not the problems to be solved, nor that difficulties vanish once proficiency is gained. All that is features of the process. And once perceived as such, stop appearing as threats or something uncanny that um, is a sign for us that something's wrong and we need to fix it. And when this internalized, attention naturally stops flow in the direction of fueling all of that negativity, doubt, and untrustworthiness towards the self. And the dispelling of the belief makes the whole mechanism goes away. And this is a work in progress. This is very hard to achieve. And I don't think there's an end stage. I don't think that there's a final line of that. I think it's through the revelation that we come up with better practices towards ourselves and our processes of work that actually give birth to something new. So I hope this was helpful. And please, if you're willing, let me know of your own process and how you deal with difficulties that come up. See you next time.